is September 11, 2017, which means it's been 16 years since September 11 attack, the terrorists' attack on America. And we wanted to take this time to reflect on what we were doing and think about how we've changed and how we think society has changed since before the attack and to this day.
When 9/11 happened, I was in university, I think third year out of the fourth year in my degree program. And I remember I was in class actually, with one of my best friends who was a groomsman in my wedding from Mexico. And the class was aircraft propulsion. And we were being taught by our professor. He had a degree from MIT, and he was teaching us about thrust and efficiency. And I forget whether he got it on his phone or someone popped into the classroom, but he relayed to us that the first plane hit the first tower. Everyone thought it was a really bad accident, a really bad miscalculation. That was the first reaction. So he came in and he said, kind of jokingly, and I remember in retrospect thinking how awful that he said that, but he said, rather jokingly, some lunatic has flown a plane into the Twin Towers, into one of the Twin Towers, and he was laughing kind of maniacally.
I was in the 10th grade, sophomore year in high school. And I remember that I was in my art class, I think it was a sculpture class, when over the PA system they announced that there was a plane that crashed into one of the Twin Towers and that they would be showing the news report in the auditorium for students who had study time hall passes or who had family members that may have been in the area.
My good friend, one of my best friends sitting next to me, his older brother was working in one of the towers, and his face just completely changed, his complexion, and understandably so. He was distraught over the possibility of his brother being hurt or worse, killed. So there was a little bit of confusion at first. But then a few minutes later, the second plane hit the second tower, and without any newscaster spoon-feeding us the information, everyone understood that that was deliberate, and it was a deliberate attack on the country. And it became clear that these were not single-engine small planes. These were full commercial 100-plus passenger, I think it was maybe 200, I can't remember, two-engine turbofan engines that were flown into the towers. And my friend, I remember feeling completely helpless and thinking that there's nothing I can do or say to comfort my friend who is worried out of his mind. He's one of four. And that was his older brother. Sorry. So yeah, that was his older brother, and he couldn't do anything. He didn't hear from him for several hours after the attack, and I accompanied him back to, we were rooming together, and I accompanied him back to our flat, our apartment, and it wasn't hours later that he finally got in touch with his brother, and thankfully his brother had made it out of the tower. But the feeling of shock when we realized that it was an attack and that his brother could have died, it was something I'll never forget, and the righteous anger that was felt.
For me, it was surreal. It didn't seem like it was really happening, even though I stopped in and did watch some of the footage of the smoke billowing out of the side of the tower. And then when the second one hit, you just thought, this is really happening. I kind of felt like, wow, I guess we're not as safe as we thought we were.
The unity that the country felt in that this was a deliberate attack on civilians. It wasn't even an attack on military personnel. It wasn't an act of conventional warfare. It was the hijacking of 2 planes and bringing down 2 towers of civilians, with over 3,000 lives taken in a matter of hours. So quite a devastating moment that I'll never forget. I'll never forget my friend and what he went through. At this point, I had 1 year left in my degree, and I remember thinking, should I postpone my degree and enlist to contribute to a war effort that would result out of this attack? And ultimately, I didn't. I can't remember the reasons why. We moved on every day that passed after that day, and we learned more. I think the righteous anger turned into more of a comforting sense of unity, seeing how the world responded to the attack, how the NATO treaty was invoked for the first time. Different countries came to the aid of the United States. I remember Tony Blair coming to a joint session of Congress and addressing the Congress and the President. And I remember being very touched by the dedication and commitment of our allies to do what was thought at that time to respond to the attack. And one thing I learned later was that at Buckingham Palace, I think it was the Coldstream Guards or perhaps another unit, but they for the first time ever played the national anthem at Buckingham Palace. And I remember thinking, wow, there's hope yet for the West, because the free peoples of the world who are committed to liberty and the freedoms that we cherish, joining together and standing up against a barbarous enemy who would murder innocent civilians.
So after the attacks happened in 2001, every subsequent year, our school on September 11 would have 2 minutes of silence, and that was the politically correct way of saying a moment of prayer. It was a moment of silence. And my faith really started to grow as I saw students and teachers express their Christianity in a public setting.
Many people feel many different things based on the events that have transpired since. You can talk about whether it be so-called quagmire in Afghanistan, and then the war in Iraq. People are perceived to have made very poor decisions in going into Iraq and then getting stuck into another quagmire. So all those things color our reactions to 9/11. And I think certain people focus on those things and let that overshadow the original event.
Since 9/11 happening, and now that we see terrorist attacks happening quite frequently, I've been desensitized now.
The approach that Western countries then decided to spread freedom or spread democracy to other nations who were not prepared or not willing to embrace those values. So a lot of bad has come out of the response to 9/11, but I think we should take the time to set the response to 9/11 aside and remember 9/11 as such.
What I saw happen was America really came together at that time, but now it kind of feels like there's nothing you can do to prevent a terrorist attack in today's day and age. I think it's the idea of and the thought of death.
It was the massacre of men, women, and children who don't wear a uniform on the scale of thousands, and remember more what unites us rather than what divides us as Western civilization.
Having the nation pause and think about what happens after death helps people to dig deeper into the purpose that they have here on Earth, to think about the possibility of a creator who is all-loving, all-knowing, and all-just.
We should take 9/11 as a moment to remember our heritage, remember the roots of Western civilization, and remember that they are under attack and under assault, 9/11 was just a major battle in that war front, and we should keep that in mind and teach our children what it is to be a child of Western civilization.
I just want to say God bless America.